Welcome, welcome. Technical difficulties, welcome to JWC Livestream. But we are here, and it seems as if it's streaming. It almost looks as if we have a show going on, but it's not without its struggles, folks. This JWC Livestream. This is our original Tuesday JWC Story Autopsy with Ricky and Tom. I'm Ricky, of course. Hello, live long and prosper. And
Tom
that
is
up there,
here.
and that's Tom up there, our own Mr. Spock. And we are here now for the purposes of creativity. Tom and I think I can speak for him in this instance. We're creative obsessors. We write as often as we can. And that's not nearly often enough by a long shot.
No.
And we're all about that stuff. And so is Joe's Writers Club. That's what JWC stands for. So Story Autopsy today, we're going to have a read show. Tom's going to read you something cool. It's a Sharilla story. So you're definitely going to want to strap in on that score. I'm all about it. That's awesome character, awesome world. Tom, how have you been, and how's your creativity going?
Really excellent. I'm about a month from now. I'll be heading off to Florida, where I get a lot of work done. But my Florida story is finished, so I've been editing. So I'm searching for something to write down there. I just don't want to just get up and twiddle my thumbs. So I think I have a couple stories narrowed down. I'd like to do a 1940s pastiche called House of the Wolfman, a sequel to House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. And a wild little story I came up with called Feeding Archibald, about a little girl who finds something that pops out of a lake. She thinks first it's a frog, but it turns out to be much more than a frog. She names it Archibald after her Uncle Archie. And no spoilers. I don't want to go any more into that. So
you and your frogs and your toads and your backyard feedings. That sounds like it's going to be a great story, Tom. So by all means, go on. Sorry,
my backyards are very dangerous to go into.
Horrifying. They're like Betty White's backyards, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
All right.
So I have my Emily trilogy and my Blood on the Sand, John Pencram short story collection, and a Sharilla short story collection. All of those are pending between now and I'm going to shoot for the 4th of July to get them up on Kindle. And
marvelous.
That should be really, really interesting. Well, I'll continue with my Vela work. And I'm going to tackle maybe in late August, early September. I'm going to get ready to tackle The Bride of Frankenstein and Her Mates. Finally get that cooking, because I'm itching to get to that one, because I love that story.
Yeah, you got a lot of irons in the fire, like any true creative obsessive. I love it, because what you're talking about with the Wolfman thing, it circles back to your abilities, because the Bride stuff you were working on, even at a zero draft when you were throwing that down, that was all delicious, like a wonderful voice. So for you to harken back to that with the Wolfman, or frankly any other thing out of that classic Universal Monsters genre, it would be fantastic. And it's monumental, really, because is this the first Florida in all those years that you won't be working on the Florida novel itself?
It's sad.
Well, but, it's
progress.
Yeah. No. Needless to say, it's great that I know you're editing it and working on it, like wrapping it up, putting it together. But it's almost like it is a thing to think about. Like, what project am I going to do during the Florida creative space? Yeah. You have time, so that with us and let us know what the muse dictates, like what it is you think you're going to zero in on. Or maybe you'll even go there and you'll get a whole other new idea for Florida, you know?
Yep, another walk on the beach, another, who knows what, I'll see.
Yeah.
So if that hits, then I'll definitely let you know when we get back that a new Florida novel, that could be Yeah. Maybe I'll do a skunk ape story.
Yeah, that would be good. The way that that all was summoned up in Emily,
Hmm.
I think you could definitely. I mean, I've been getting so hip with Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all that stuff from Dave Politis's shows, his Bigfoot class. That's another thing we got to do. We got to do another one of those monster craft. Remember the one we had with Amber?
Yeah.
That was a wicked show.
That was
I had a lot of.
blast.
I want to say, when was that? That was probably like about a month ago. We did that.
Pretty
You,
close.
yeah, you got to check that out, folks. That was a great one. Um, so creatively speaking, I'm like all over the place. I threw down like 1,200 words of an essay. I finished Exsanguinator, and I'm like on my way to like halfway done with the final edit, and then I'm trying to get it out to be edited pretty much ASAP. Um, I have this thing called Journey to the Mountain. It's basically like the whole concept of Mount Timeless. Um, I want to do a book that basically is about that, semi-autobiographical with heavy reskins of fiction, presto changeo type of role reversal for things, names adjusted based on a true story, dubious. But the whole point of it is, at the end of the book, I want to fictionalize the mountain coming true. And then I'm going to put the Mount Timeless Constitution like right in there. So it'll be like kind of like a proof of concept, like make the dream come true situation.
Hmm.
Maybe we could use it as propaganda for such. Any true creative. I mean, this place, I just got to describe it so that you people can see it. That's been my biggest bummer, as far as I'm concerned, when I look in the mirror of my past couple years, is that I didn't think of that. Like, it came to me when I was talking with you and David about all this stuff. It came to me, and now I'm like, I got to write this book. So I figure like 40,000 word novella thing, explaining it, just unpacking it. It should be fun to do. And then there's this other thing that I want to write. It's kind of Xenoware. It's about this. It's another one of these asteroid stories, Tom. So until the soup thickens, I'm not going to get too much into it. But I did a lot of outlining on it, but I want to do more. So that and poetry every once in a while, as I said, I got one I got to write down. It's just I've been busy like crazy lately with work and editing and everything else. So creativity.
We're on it.
It's we certainly are. We can be questioned upon many issues, but not on this. I think we're where we're supposed to be.
Hmm.
So how about we get to the read, Tom? What are you going to read for us today? Is it a Shirella?
Yes, it's the very, very first Shirella story. More or less how she became who she is, how she got to where she is. This is when she's 16 years old, and her her parents were killed in a palace coup. Her father was a prince, and there's something that got caught up in the whole machinations of this coup, and they were killed along with a bunch of others. And Shirella took off from the palace with her uncle, and they fled south. And went. This is in the Mountain Kingdoms, which is on the west coast, the western end of side of Barema, and they went as far south as they could, and they're hiding. They were in a cabin in the woods, just trying to just stay low, keep low, and trying to figure out what they want to do from this point on. And that's how it opens up. And Lumarin is her uncle Lumarin, he's a priest, and sort of like a in kung fu, that kind of one of those kind of very knowledgeable priests that could kick your butt. A
Sage.
sage, yes.
Yeah.
Not violent, but he can handle himself. But he takes it on himself. He could have fled, but he took Shirella with him, and because he felt responsible for that, and he's trying to keep her safe. So let's share the screen.
Hmm.
Oh boy. Doesn't look like we'll be able to share the live. Let me just get to what I can. Okay, here we go. Red Vengeance. Good. Hold on. Share screen. Boom, there we are.
Oh, good.
So Red Vengeance. All right.
Excellent.
Shirella blocked the blow from the heavy staff, parrying it and striking the wood with a satisfying knock. Her footing was unsure in the snow. She took a few missteps back to assess her opponent. He stood over a head taller than she was. Top of her head came to his heart. He wore the traditional outfit of a stone elf priest, even though he had not set foot in his place of worship for many seasons. The gray and brown material was worn, but not the least bit tattered. His cap covered his entire head, save for the face. She marveled at how much Lumarin looked like both her mother and her father, Lumarin's brother. The gray-green eyes had the same piercing fierceness as her father. It was his mouth and small nose that reminded her of his mother. The face comforted her, knowing both parents were still inside this one special person. Getting tired, Lumarin spoke as he advanced on her. No. Come on, and try that move again. She studied his eyes and they moved off of her. She stepped aside. Lumarin's momentum carried him past her. She swept her staff swiftly, tapping him in the ribs. He reached out to slow himself down. His feet went out from under him, dragging him down. She gripped his hand to steady him and fell on top of him. They landed in a heap, and their breath was knocked from both of them. Shirella tried to get to her feet and slipped on her backside. Lumarin moved with great slowness, rising nearly to his full height when his feet betrayed him and shot out from under him. We can lie here all day and wait for it to melt. Lumarin smiled at her remark and looked around. He rolled onto a thicker area of new snow. Here he found it easy to stand. When you're on adverse ground, find a new place to find your footing. It's getting dark, and the roast will be done. I'm getting hungry. Perhaps when Niall has risen, we can duel in the moonlight. These old bones will be in bed by then. You are welcome to practice by moonlight. Be careful. There are bandits about. I will. Earlier that day, the boar proved to be a challenge for them to catch. Shirella and Lumarin came upon it while returning from the market. Near death, its foot broken and raw inside of the trap it dragged behind it. Lumarin circled it warily as the pig snapped and snarled at him. I'll let you sneak up on it first. Shirella nodded. She crept up close to draw its attention while her uncle jabbed at it with a stick. The creature's strength ebbed away as the blood loss took its toll. As it bit into Lumarin's pole, Shirella stepped in and sliced its throat. It kicked at her and knocked her to the ground. When it turned to attack her, Lumarin leaped onto its back. He held the struggling beast until its life ended. Are you all right? She nodded, a little angry to have been taken by surprise by its feet. He helped her to her feet. Don't waste that anger on what can't be avoided. Now you know to stay away from its hind legs. Dragging the boar back to the cabin exhausted them. The trap and the infected leg were tossed into the trees behind the root cellar. The circling vultures squawked as the hide and entrails were tossed onto the trap. 2 black bears crossed the road and moved through the woods to feast. Lumarin got his knives and butchered the pig near the rock outcropping. He handed Shirella pieces of meat, and she went to place them in the root cellar. When she came out, 3 wolves stepped out of the trees near her uncle. She drew Bluebone and chased them off. A red fox stood its ground, unafraid of her sword. It moved its head from the sword to the boar, licking its chops. Lumarin cut away the hindquarters and the ribs before the bears stepped out behind the fox. He wrapped the pieces in burlap and stepped away from the carcass. Shirella made sure he was in the root cellar before joining him. Very brave of you, and foolish. I couldn't let them hurt you. Lumarin smiled as he salted the meat and placed it in a wooden barrel. I was in no danger. The bears knew I'd leave soon enough for them, and the fox is a coward. How do you know this? Many years spent on the hunt with the king. I observed the behavior of every animal before and after a kill was made. Did you kill anything? Some. I let the king have his sport, and I joined in the feast afterward. He took the hind and moved up to the cabin. A large pot of water soon held the meat and assorted vegetables. It simmered all day while Shirella and her uncle trained. Soon the aroma of fresh stew filled the cabin. Fresh herbs and some new ice-over carrots joined the boiling boar. As she trained, the hours dragged by. Shirella grew hungry and restless. The scavengers had gone, taking with them every trace of the carcass. Even the blood-soaked snow was eaten. A new snow began to fall, coating the ground and adding to the mud on the road. The combat practice cut short Shirella's questions about her past. Lumarin rarely spoke of his life or of her parents. He was not one to get nostalgic, and the time had to be right for him to open. Combat training kept her too busy to ask questions. They fought for over 2 hours. Lumarin never gave an inch to his students. You've come a long way since we left the palace. Lumarin swung the pot from the fire. His knife and long fork held and sliced off a chunk of meat. He dropped it on the plate Shirella held. He speared 2 potatoes and some vegetables. The long, slotted spoon dug more smaller bits of carrot and onion. The plate sat at the center of the table. Lumarin and Shirella bowed their heads as he thanked Esh for their feast. Shirella lowered her head in respect to her uncle, her eyes never leaving the steaming meat. Always be grateful for your food, Shirella. You can never be sure when your next meal will be, or where it comes from. She ate a chunk of the pig and savored it. He smiled. Correct. We were very lucky to find this boar when it came out of the trees. A minute either way, and we would have missed it. The bears would have had a bigger meal, or the wolves. These carrots are sweet. Have you any more in the cellar? Another dozen and an entire basket of potatoes. How many of the purple ones? A handful. I put them aside for you. Thank you. I know they're your favorite. I'll eat the others. I'd appreciate your thoughtfulness. We can split the sweet potatoes. Deal. Voices from outside made them pause their meal. The speakers were loud and rowdy. Visitors, Lumarin smiled. Take my knife and separate the ribs into smaller pieces. Maybe they're just hungry. Are you sure? Yes. Now go. I'll see what they want. They may be lost. Still, be careful. She lowered the cellar door and trod down the earthen steps. A lantern, turned low, gave her the light she needed. The ribs were in a box, shut tight to prevent mice from getting to it. Above her, the outer doors opened with a loud bang, slamming against the wall. 3 sweet onions fell off the shelf at her feet. As Shirella kneeled to pick them up, strange voices grew loud. You don't have no money, old man. I live according to Esh's teachings. I only have enough to feed, clothe me. Shirella turned the lantern down to a speck of light. She moved up the stairs and pushed the door open a crack. She propped the door open with a small rock. 3 men dressed in shabby, torn animal skins stood around her uncle. Each was twice his size. Lumarin stood with his back to the wall by the hearth. I see you can give us a good cut of meat. He moved and spoke like their leader. The other 2 waited for him to talk before they reacted. The leader was the largest of the trio. Where'd you buy this from? Asked the smallest. His slick back red hair glistened with animal grease. I found it on the road as I returned from the village. It was in a trap and near death. I put it out of its misery and took the hindquarters. What about the rest? A boar has enough meat to feed 6 people. The leader held Lumarin against the wall with a single meaty hand. The middle finger was missing. That was all I could get before the wolves moved in. I was alone and couldn't hold them off and cut away more meat. Not smart, leaving good meat to the wolves. They don't deserve to eat as well as us. As I said, if I had stayed any longer, they would have eaten me and the boar. Bah, you're a coward. The middle-sized trespasser reached into the pot and took out a chunk of meat. He bit into it, the juices running down his chin and down his throat. He's a priest. The leader scanned the room. Same thing. Let's take what's worth taking and be out of here. The leader didn't see much worth stealing. A few books, an ornamental dagger, and a thallium goblet. His hand moved from Lumarin's chest as the leader was distracted. Lumarin twisted the leader's arm behind his back until the big man shouted in pain. With a swift movement, he ducked under the arm and kicked the leader's leg behind his knee. The big man toppled over, smashing a chair to pieces. Shirella's uncle vaulted over the leader and grabbed his staff. He turned, and the wooden pole was torn from his grip. Lumarin turned and reached for the rod. The leader snarled as he jabbed Lumarin in the gut. The priest clutched his stomach and fell to the floor. Shirella's eyes widened in shock. She placed her hands on the door and was about to shove it open. Her eyes met his as he winced in pain. He smiled and gave his head a quick shake as the men surrounded him. 3 long knives plunged into Lumarin's body over and over. The leader kicked him in the temple. Shirella heard the skull crack. The redhead poured the boiling pot on Lumarin. Potatoes and carrots bounced across the floor. Shirella's eyes filled with tears as she slid down the stairs into the dark cellar. She fell back and lay on the floor, unable to move. As the tears fell, she gathered up a pair of boots and an old quilt and headed outside. The old outer door creaked as she pushed it open, but the sound was lost in the wind. She closed the door behind her, careful not to drop it like she always did. The rocks behind the cabin provided enough shelter to keep her out of the storm's winds. Here she huddled and collected her thoughts. I can kill one of them if I go in right now, but then the others would kill me. Bluebone gave her a single time lash a day. It would be wasted unless she could kill all 3 of them at once. The door of the cabin opened, and the 3 killers spilled out. The leader gestured with his hands, and his companions walked around the cabin. When the redhead found the root cellar, he called for the others. The leader grabbed the door and tore it open. The door came free of its hinges, and it was thrown to one side. It slid in the snow and came to rest at Shirella's feet. So there we go.
Well, that was well done. The pacing is just perfect. You got all narrative drivers flying, wheeling, spinning all at once. Your dialogue is great. Your expo, the general voice you're writing in, the whole training segment, what you did with the snow as far as description, getting us set up, the devouring of the old snow, the falling of the fresh snow. You're talking about mud, and then these villains show up, and it all goes downhill from there. Even the application of the violence, the barbarous bestial fury of it, the way these guys are just ruthless, like it's a priest and they could care less. So she gets to see that injustice. And you left me on a cliffhanger. Like, first of all, I've been reading these stories and hearing you talk about these stories and talking with you about Varema for a great many years. And to hear the origin story of Shirella is it's very, very cool to hear this, because she's a young novice Shirella who's still putting it together. She's still figuring it out. Like, the Shirella that I'm used to would kill these guys like in her sleep. Like, she could sleepwalk. She could sleepwalk and murder these guys. So this Shirella who's weighing options out in the storm, very, very interesting. And well written, man. Like, well written. It was really, really cool to hear it.
Thank you.
Now, I know Shirella is a very old character for you. When did this origin story, like, when did the muse flash for this origin story hit you?
Wow. I've had the idea that she's an orphan and she lived with her uncle for a while and he was killed. That's all I knew for many years. And then maybe about a year ago, I had this idea that first the title came to me, Red Vengeance. That she becomes consumed with getting these 3 guys that kill her uncle, but she's tries to be smart about it. She goes, if I just go after them, I'll get one of them, and then they'll kill me. And she says, I want to be the one to survive this encounter. I want them dead, and I want me to be okay. So she says, I got to think this through. She's kind of got some natural street smarts, and she in the story, she she says, you know, I'm not in any kind of rush. I'm going to figure out when I get an opportunity, boom, I'll strike, and I'll just pick them off one by one. And so that hit me that I said I want to do a story where how Shirella became who she was and what the origin, the basics about thieving and her sword play and her just her attitude toward life that you know treat everybody the same unless they step on you, then you step back. You and
Yeah, yeah.
so she and she's I wanted how old do I make? I said because she's 16 years old, very naive, uh, still pretty tough, probably tough enough to kill almost anybody around. She knows her sword play. She knows her like her some martial arts moves. He trained her in unarmed combat, survival out in the woods and stuff. And she also has her blue bone, which is her 10,000-year-old sword. So that's a good backup.
Yeah.
She has what's called time lash, where she can pause time against one opponent a day, and that's it. So that's why she could have paused time and run one guy through, but then the second would have been over, and it would have said, "Get her!" I would have chased her, and then but she wanted to. She didn't want to not want to be hunted. She wanted to be the hunter, the predator in this situation, and so that's how her attitude was. They are prey. They're nothing more to me than that. So that's how that
Well,
whole
yeah.
evolved. And I probably said, I'm going to sit down and just write. This is about second draft. I just basically wrote little bits and pieces, scenes, and I organized them. And I said, okay, I know exactly what I want to do. There's a set piece in a mill or with a gigantic what do you call it, water wheel that grinds grain, and there's a scene in an inn, and there's so it just basically slowly evolved, and I sat down one day. I said, okay, let's just do this. I have it's almost all. This is third drafter. I have it almost all into the computer now. I have it in. I wrote a bunch of it at work. Where I
One.
would I get an afternoon, and I would do 500 or 600 words. I do a scene, a couple scenes, and I put Red Vengeance, the date on it, and I have a folder, and I just kept all the sheets together. And so this one is very. I also had to figure out how in the world did she get from the western side of Arema to the east side where she lives now, because the world is divided by the Wall of Altez, which is no one is allowed to touch it. It's about 200 feet tall, about 10 feet thick, like an onyx wall. And it cuts the entire world literally in half. So she lives on the east side. All the other stories are on the east side where you've read, this story takes place in the west. She was born in the mountain kingdoms, which are the stone elf kingdoms, or the mountain kingdoms. And so I said, how in the world am I going to get her past the wall? And so that also is included. So anyway,
Fantastic. That's the thing about origin stories. They generally help to shape characterization. They establish the character's code, especially if they consist of this situation. Clearly, this priest, this sage, was a mentor to her. And the fact that these people murdered him, she's not like the death of respect. Like when someone you respect dies, especially in a senseless, brutal way like that, that has a habit of, instilling a few values and forming a code. So how do you feel about that in this high fantasy / swords and sorcery setting that you have here? To establish her the way she is, because when we've read her as an adult, after she's killed a dragon or three, we know like she's made of iron, and she's like one of these femme fatales. She's got all this stuff, and she's not a dope. Like, she's quick. So
No.
this is young her though. No one could begrudge her being less at the beginning, so that she could be more when we meet her later. But what is your attitude that way as far as like shaping her? Like, when did you first think of? Because you were, I understand about the origin story, but I'm talking about, um, did you ever have any contemplation where you were thinking like, what made her? Like, did you ever wonder about that?
Oh, what was the major point, turning points in her life? Like this is definitely one of them. The death of her uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this actually made her who she is. If he hadn't gotten killed, my entire world, I would not have been writing about it. Because
Yeah.
she would have been staying living in the southern most what do you call it, mountain kingdom, and she would have been, the two of them would have gone on together and had a life together and grown old and whatever, and we never would have heard about Shirella. Um, so there's something definitely special about her because she manages to get passed from one side of the wall to the other. And I haven't explored that yet, why she's able to do that. She does it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
How long is her origin stories? Like, how long are those going to go on? Like, is this chapters or these like short stories? Like, are there going to be like episodes of it? Like, in other words, when is her origin done in your mind?
Oh, when this story is done, then it's going to be the first story in the Shirella's collection, and the rest of them are uh, all the ones you know of. Yeah, the
Hmm.
Black Scent and the Wrath of the Ice Dragon, etc. Um,
That's going to be
so
great. That's going to be great. I can't
I
wait for you to get that done.
I there's a gap of, let's say, 10 years.
Hmm.
She does a lot in those 10 years. She becomes a mercenary. She has a lot of lovers in that time. She's not a floozy, but she creates influence with, her friendships, her love interests. They become people that she knows that she can ask favors of, or she knows I can rely on this person, this general, this king, this merchant. She keeps her word. She's a good person. If she does a favor for you, um you know she expects you to be decent to her back, and be, and she knows a lot of, in those 10 years she gets to know a lot of people all over the East, uh in the kingdoms, the Eastern kingdoms, and the Southern Union. And she makes a lot of friends. She makes a few enemies, but that one story about the prince that she escorts to his school, where she's got that general that she killed all his guards, and finally comes to respect her. That goes, you know, I can't, the king has rescinded. I'm not going to send any more royal guards after you. He goes, but I got to hand it to
Yeah.
you. You can handle yourself. So,
No, I know, I know. Now, folks, you hear the way Tom's talking about this. This character Cheryl is a great character, and she would be a great character wherever she's from. But Tom has tremendous amount of fantasy cartography and atlasing as far as these kingdoms are concerned. And all that world building, that's the proof that's in the pudding. That's when you hear it on the page, the way all the expo comes out. Tom's good at dialogue and whatever. You can see for yourself. Check out his short story collections on Amazon or whatever. But I mean, the way he lays this stuff out, this comes out of world building. Like, he could tell a story, write a horror story without maps. But in this particular case, there's a certain richness that's on the page. There's a certain authenticity to the world, and it all translates to the characters. These sages, these bandits, even Sharilla herself. And I imagine she hasn't met Lim yet.
no, it's a long way off.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I have that story. The stories I have are how she meets Lim, and how she meets her really good friend Fraber,
Hmm.
who's a illusionist that there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. But how she gets her horse, you know, um, The Lim story is Wrath of the Ice Dragon, where she chases this she wounds an ice dragon that's out that kills her horse and tries to eat her. So it's
Mhm.
dying and she's got to hunt it down because it's hurt and it's killing everything it meets along in its path. So she goes, I have to dispatch this thing before it hurts
Mhm.
anybody else. And so
Certainly.
along the way she
Yeah.
picks up Lim.
Yeah. So that's an aspect of her character, that sense of justice, that sense of duty. It's clear that that comes from these formative events in this origin story, because she remembers the brutality of these bandits. And you're saying there's other things even still that get her where she has a sense of justice and a sense of right and wrong. And I dig she's a thief or whatever, but sometimes in Conan land, when you're in Conan land, sometimes people need to be stolen from. It's just
Hmm.
how it is.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like obviously thou shalt not steal, but there's certain instances when you're talking about fantasy where these are not the same moral dimensions. Like an evil cult, some kind of wicked prince, a monster. Like what harm did Bilbo do stealing that cup from Smog? None at all. I mean, it made Smog mad, and a bunch of horses and cows died. But what I'm saying is that wasn't Smog's. So it's like it's all depending on how you
Yeah.
view these things ultimately.
Yeah,
Um,
she becomes like a thief for hire at one point where
yeah.
someone says, "I that crown actually belongs to me, and it's
Mm-hmm.
in this kingdom." And they contact her, says, "We'd like you to go take that crown and bring it to us, and we'll pay you handsomely." And she weighs the situation. She says, "Okay, give me 25% of it now, and I'll go take a look and see what the situation is. And when I bring the thing back, you could pay me the rest." And she expects people to keep their word.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a sense and a code of honor there. So, folks, the homework is all these great fantasy writers, Tolkien, um, George R. R. Martin, all right, and there are many others besides. They have maps. They make maps. Sometimes they're local hemispheric maps. Sometimes they're big global maps. There's even the question of cosmologies, because in Tom's world, Varema, where that story he read takes place, um, there are these god shards, and there's monsters and dragons and non-human races. There's portology with people falling from other universes, like the classic Planescape manual and all that from back in the day. But it has its own original twist that's attached to the cosmology. So when you have all that stuff stacked one on top of the other beyond Tom's voice, it's no wonder that it sounds as great as it does. And it sounds to me, it sounds enviable. I have a plan on trying to do something like this. I've been outlining it, and it was actually kind of supposed to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Hmm.
The book Pyramidia. I'm looking forward to getting to that because of the main character. Well, this has been a great show. As usual, time flies when you're having fun, and we almost always have fun reading, going over the content, talking about creativity and all this other stuff. And it's a pleasure, Tom. Thank you for reading that. It came out
Sure.
great. Um, please go to joeswritersclub.com if you're fans of our content. Check out the author bios and the blogs that are there. Sign up for joeswriters.club, our forums. Go to JWC's social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And most importantly, go to our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe and share that with anybody you think would like the kind of content we're doing. If you know someone who's a creative, who's always writing in a notebook or talking about concepts, like maybe they want to take the first steps into writing, or maybe they've been writing since you knew them. That's the thing about creatives. It's best that we help each other, because there's not a lot of help for us out there. The conformists and the commercialists, they have help. They have tsunamis of help all over the place. creatives, yeah, maybe. But I feel like we got to stick together in a community and do our best to fight our way to anywhere in the industry. And that's what it is with JWC. You know, we can't make anyone a better writer, but our goal is to make them a different writer. And sometimes that difference makes all the difference as far as where you're going. You learn something new that you didn't know before. You hear some advice, because that's how we got there. We read a lot, and we hung out in with creatives in creative communities, writing clubs like JWC, and we've just been learning and learning, because the learning never stops. And that's what's fun about creativity. So thanks again, Tom. We want to thank our viewers for checking out the show, our listeners, and everybody, stay creative. Take time out of your day, outline a story, write a poem, try to throw down some dialogue for a chapter. Give yourself some time in the creative mindset. It's rewarding and satisfying beyond compare. And check us out. Head to our plugs. Like we said, we're going to drop some links in the comments. And you guys take care. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks for watching.